All right, guys. Today we're gonna talk about 40K. Okay, we're gonna talk about 40K. Now, this is a video about how players should approach their games. It will make you feel so much better. Okay, let me explain. Okay, now before we start anything, we just have to establish some sort of definitions, right? Player skill and army/army list. Okay, well, what faction you play? Okay, now a player skill determines the ceiling. Okay, I can't spell ceiling because I suck. Okay, player skill determines ceiling of how you perform. All right, the higher your skill is, the higher the ceiling. All right, the faction you play slash list slash detachment. Okay, whatever, it's any army building elements. Okay, it's the floor. All right, so what I'm trying to say, okay, it's the floor. So what I'm trying to say here is the higher the skill, the higher the ceiling. And the better the faction that you're playing, for either being overpowered or whatever, determines the floor of how good you are in the game in general. All right. So this is what's happening. If there's something that you should know, that in the long run, you can what you can control in the long run, it's the player skill. You can control the player skill in the long run. You can't what you cannot control, however, in the long run is the faction. You can't have control over. Okay, what do I mean by that? All right. So let's look at this graph, right? So on the x-axis, we have the army/list. This is how powerful a faction is. Okay, this is how powerful a faction is at a certain given in a certain given amount of time. Okay, so let's say in the current patch, well, so to speak, Eldari is very good. Okay, so Eldari will have a very high floor when it comes to win rate, right? So over here we have player that has high skill and high army. Okay, very powerful army with very high skill. Down here we have player with low skill and high army. All right. Over here we have player with high skill and low army. Over here we have people with low skill and low army. All right. So now this is not to categorize people. Okay, let me get this right out of the window. Okay, this is not about categorizing. I'm not trying to put like, okay, you're this type of player, you're this type of player. No, this is not what this is about. What this chart is trying to tell is when you are playing a game based on the current power level of your army and your personal skill, how you should approach a game that will make you feel better. Okay, so for instance, let's say you're playing an army. Okay, let's say you're playing an army that you really love, that you truly love, you really enjoy playing this army, but you don't get to control how good or how bad it is over time, because Games Workshop determines that. Okay, Balanced Data Slate determines that. You can't control over it. But within a period of time, if you have been collecting a lot of different factions, that you can basically play whatever you want, right? So we have players like this. These guys, people who has very high skill, that also pick a very high army, which is, army with very high win rate by default, right? These guys are what I called tournament staples, right? These guys are the one that wins tournaments most consistently, because not only they have very high skill, they also pick armies that have a very high win rate. All right, people down here on the other end is they are, well, I don't want to do this, but they are tryhards. Okay, for the lack of a better word, they are tryhards. Okay, now both of these players, both of them are what people call meta chasers. Now, meta chasers, not necessarily bad, okay? Because that's what they are. That's what they are doing. They are chasing metas. Okay, so if you look at this, people with high skill, if they can pick between a low army and a high army, but if they're trying to go for the tournament wins, they should be picking an army that has a higher win rate. Duh, right? Of course, obviously. So what they're doing is chasing the meta, which is completely fine. That's what they do. People down here, on the other hand, they recognize they don't have such a high skill yet, right? I mean, skill can be grown over time. You're not always gonna be down here. Eventually, everyone's gonna be up here. Okay. Eventually, everyone's gonna have very high player skill. But once you switch a faction, and since you have to have enough experience to know how the faction works and how the playstyle works, people can be resetted back to here at any given time when they choose to start a new faction, okay? Or people who just start playing the game. People always start from here and they work towards up here, okay? This is what they do, okay? This is not saying that people with low skill and high army are just generally bad, okay? What these guys can probably do is they're trying their best to win, because over time, what they're expecting is if they pick a very good army to start with, and then they can practice their skill with a good army, and then eventually they can aim to be the tournament staples, okay? Because this is what they chase for. They are more focused on people over on the right-hand side. They focus more on winning. Now, this is not bad per se, okay? Trying to win is not a bad thing. It's just generally, overachieve or accomplish this is like what they were trying to do is like, I just want to win, all right? I just want to win. I want to pick a faction that has a very high win rate, and I'm gonna try to work my skill over time that I will eventually become this. Then I will win most of my tournaments, okay? However, this is where the fun part begins. Players does not have control over this. Games Workshop has control over this. So you can very likely play a faction, play a flavor of a month. You might very well start from here, and then you're expecting that by the time you have grown your skill to this point, that you will be reaching at this stage where you're playing a high skill army with a very high with a very high floor. Okay, this is what you're expecting to see. However, with a snap of a finger, okay, Games Workshop can turn your high army into a low army at any given time. Okay, obviously every season, okay, every 3 months they get to do that. All right, they're gonna do that once a while, but you should be expecting that it will happen. Okay, you do not have control over this. How an army is good or bad and how a list or detachment perform, you have no control over in the long run, obviously, but within a certain time frame. That's a balance data slate just hit, right? So you know for sure within the next 3 months, things are not going to change, okay? There might be some emergency patches or whatever, or maybe some new code that comes out and changes the meta a little bit, but generally speaking, you should feel very safe on playing a faction, right? If you already own the faction that it's currently being recognized as high army, army with a very high win rate, then you should be comfortable of taking them out and then start playing them. But if you don't have that army, and then you decide, okay, well, everyone's playing that meta army, I'm gonna jump in, okay? I'm gonna jump in right now. But by the time you finish painting and everything, your high army has a very high chance to become the low army. By the time you've prepared everything, and then by the time you have get on the table and start practicing, you're reaching the end of the 3-month period. Okay, it's highly possible. Okay, it takes at least a month. You take at least 1 month on painting your models and everything, unless you already have it. And then you spend another month at the very least on practicing how to play. Then you only have 1 month left to reap your result. Okay, so only pick high army if you already have it. If you already have a high army, bring it out and start playing. Let's take me for example. I have Eldar, Chaos Space Marine, Emperor's Children, Sister of Battle, and Tyrannus. Right? What's the flavor of the month right now? Well, currently the best. Eldar is doing pretty well. There's a lot of Eldar that's reached podium. Okay, then I should be playing Eldar. If I'm aiming to, since I already own Eldar, then there's no reason for me to not to do this. I should just play whatever is good right now, right? Why shoot myself in the foot, right? However, if currently, let's say, what's a good faction right now? All right, Raven Guard, right? Let's take Raven Guard for example. Raven Guard has seen a lot of recognition recently. Let's say Raven Guard is really good, but I have 0 Raven Guard. Okay, I have 0 Raven Guard. If I jump in right now, if I jump on the wagon right here, I will need to restart knowing how to play Raven Guard from 0, that my player skill on Raven Guard, the faction, it's low, right? Even if Raven Guard is currently, well, I know they are not, but like, let's just say they are. They're an army with very high win rate. It would still take me about 1 month to paint them, to collect them, to build them and paint them, and another month to practice how they are being played. And then I will only have a month to enjoy the benefit of having a high skill army and, a high skill and a high army to play. Okay, if that makes any sense. Okay, so let's go the other end of the table. Okay, let's say you just pick a faction you love. Okay, you don't really care. People over here, unlike people here who chase wins, people over here wants to be recognized for skill. Okay, they don't really give a damn about winning tournament consistently. They just got something to prove. Okay, most people, I think I can speak for a lot of people. Most people secretly wants to be recognized as these Chad. These guys are Chad. All right. Why do I say that? Because they're playing an army that has very low floor, but with their excellent skill, they are managed to boost the win rate. And even if they don't win the tournament, even if they don't get to the first place, as long as they reach the podium, that's good enough for them. Because they've proved to the world that even a shitty army that I currently own can still perform really well because of my personal skill. Okay, player over here wants to be recognized for their skill, not necessarily for the win. So when do you decide you want to be to be part of this quadrant? Okay, so let's say you have a faction that you really like, and you don't really care about any other faction. You just want to play this faction. You will start here. Okay, if you start here, you generally should have lower expectation on winning. You should focus more on your personal skill. You should, okay, let's say you're practicing your games or whatever tournament you play in, right? If you're under these 2 quadrants, okay, since this is where you start, right? You're playing an army that you really like. It's bad, but you don't care. You just really like this army, and your experience with this army is very low. So you will start here, which is, on paper, it might seem like to be like the worst place to be in on these 4 quadrants, right? But that's not entirely true, because like I said again and again, the army, whether it's high or low, is not determined by players. Players do not determine this. Games Workshop determine this. Every 3 months, Games Workshop revamps the whole thing, fucks the metas up, and well, it depends on how you proceed it, but how you depends on how you see it, but every 3 months, that's what Games Workshop do. Okay, they will fuck up your army, so you might swing between here and here. You might swing back and forth, right? But over time, okay, as long as you focus on one single faction and not resetting yourself back to 0, you will always reach to these 2 quadrants eventually, right? You don't get to decide where you land, all right? But if you focus more on personal growth, your player skill growth, you will eventually reach here, all right? So it doesn't really matter where you start, what army you pick to start playing this game, okay? Now, obviously, okay, it depends on the situation. If you already collect a lot of stuff, like me, okay? I already collect so many different factions. I own a lot of different models, all right? Now, if there's a tournament that I really want to win, let's say LVO is next week, all right? And I really want to win, or at least go home with a 4-2 or like a 5-1, right? If I want to go for that record, then I should pick whatever have the highest floor, okay? Whatever that has the highest floor of an army in my collection, and then go to the tournament so I have a higher chance of winning the tournament, okay? Because that's what I want. I want to win the tournament, all right? And I already own the army, so why the heck not? However, if you don't own the army, but the army seems to be really, really good, you shouldn't jump into it, all right? Because, like I said, by the time you finish building, painting, practicing, and then you only have like 1 month window left to actually do anything with the army, all right? It's actually better to play what you have been playing for a very long time, that over time, your skill will grow anyway. Your skill will grow over time. And then eventually, you will be recognized. And it's not just recognized, like you are, right? You really are. You really are players that has a very high skill and play whatever the fuck they want, okay? And then maybe in the next patch, when Games Workshop decide to unfuck your army, you might end up from here to here. So the end of the so the moral of the story, it's been 16 minutes. It's a very long rant, all right? What I'm trying to say is, don't give a crap about what army you pick. It doesn't really matter. Focus on your player skill growth. That let the Games Workshop decide which side you're going to be, right? You don't have control over the army. The power of an army, you have no control over. Just focus on your personal player skill growth, and then eventually you'll reach either here or here, which in my opinion, both are really good. You're either winning a lot of tournament because your army happens to be really good, or you don't win a lot of tournament, but you go to but you reach a very high level of a standard of the army, right? Let's say your army is really, really bad, but you walk home with like a 4-1 or a 5-1, right? Yeah, sure, you didn't go to the podium or whatever, but it's recognizable. This is why either Art of War or like Doomhammer, when they feature a very special list, even if the list does not have a clear 6-0 or like a 5-0, people still feature lists that is like, like a 4-1 or like a 5-1, if they're playing something that is generally conceived as bad, but they ended up being really good because of some really pro players making them good. All right, so that's pretty much it. So I hope this video kind of guides you on why personal skill over time is more important than what army you pick, and then you should just enjoy what you play. That's it. See you guys. Goodbye. If you like my content, please follow and like for more.